Welcome to the Seek Community Podcast. My name is Joshua Nelson, and I like to talk about dating, how people meet people, and building community. I was very deep into the club scene at one point. I was. I was going every weekend, and I didn't even go to drink at all. I went to meet girls and to dance with girls, and it was fun. And I would go by myself sometimes, which is kind of weird now that I think about it. But I would go by myself. Mainly in high school, though. I didn't do this in college. In college, I always had a group of people to go with, but high school was different. I don't think it was that weird to go by yourself because when I would go, I would always know people when I went, and then I'd hang out with them. In Detroit, it was so popular and normal to go to these clubs where everybody would go and make out and twerk on each other and stuff and meet people. So it was all that we did. No one was trying to do anything else. So I would just go by myself. I had my dad drop me off. He dropped me off on State Fair grounds over there on the east side by Woodward. And it was fun. I ain't gonna lie. I actually enjoyed it a lot. It was a lot of fun. And that excitement is contagious and addictive because it's the music is playing and the literal dancing was like pretty much like having sex. It's like dry humping. And I ain't gonna lie to you. I enjoyed it. I got girls dancing on me. So you can't uh definitely deny that if you're a young guy, you're gonna not want to go to stuff like that. You're going to want to go to stuff like that. And but I want to talk about how bars and clubs, just how normal or just how central it is to how people meet people. And I've been thinking about a lot about that and pondering on it because I don't drink and I always wondered, how else would people meet people if you don't drink? That's like the main way people assemble is through drinking. And that's just drinking. So, um when I would go to these bars and clubs, yes, I'm meeting people, I'm having fun, I'm, getting girls' numbers. And then when I stop going, I'm like, man, I really ain't got nothing going on this weekend. Like, I don't know what to do. And obviously, yes, I have to educate myself and get more informed and figure out other stuff to do. And then get involved in church. And church helped me stay busy. But I always wonder, like, what if you're not Christian? Like, what else are you going to do if you don't drink and you want to do something, right? You want to go and meet people. Where are you going to go? You going to go to the library? No, ain't nobody going to go to the library. Ain't nobody there. Are you going to go to the park? I don't know. It depends on how old you are. It's just uh it's so sad that bars and clubs are the central force in how we meet people. And it just is what it is. And I do think bars and clubs are emblematic of American culture in a sense. I think in America, in general, we've dumbed down and watered down everything. We're less sophisticated. We're less intellectual. And you can see this across college campuses. There's no intellectual diversity. No one wants to challenge themselves. Less people are reading. And I think that has a lot to do with everything just being watered down and people not yearning to learn and try different things. And we all resort to escapism and entertainment. And even our taste in movies is dying, right? It's all kind of the same now. I just wonder how other countries, how they engage with each other. I wonder what the infrastructure is like. I wonder if libraries are used more in other places, and that's where people go to socialize and, talk about the books that they read. Or I wonder what that's like. But when I think about here, really the main way you're going to meet people and hang out and do something fun is going to a bar or club, especially if you're young. When you're older, I guess there could be other stuff you could do, maybe. But even for older people, older people tend to be more engaged civically, and they tend to be more proactive in their community, and they volunteer. The older generations, because they have more at stake, they have property and they have kids. They're invested in their community. They're paying taxes, so they have to be involved and know what's going on and be aware. So they'll start organizations, they'll get involved in church, they'll support a charity, they'll help at a food drive. Older people tend to be more proactive in that sense in terms of meeting people that way. Younger people, however, again, we always resort to the bars and clubs and meeting people, and no one's really trying to do anything else. There's no hype around anything else. Music festivals, yeah, that's a cool thing, but music festivals are more of like an event. I found concerts to be pretty cool. Like I would go to concerts and listen to bands. That's fun. That could be a cool thing to do. In New York City, I went and saw Olivia Jean in Brooklyn. She's part of a band that I liked. I saw just other few bands that I liked, that I would listen to. So concerts can be cool, like kind of the smaller venues. Music festivals are cool too. So those are cool things to do that are great alternatives to bars and clubs. But in terms of like bread and butter, it's the bars and clubs. Um, because it's exciting. You got the music playing. Um, you're going with your friends, y'all pre-gaming, and then it's like that whole sense of, oh, who are we going to meet? What cute guys are there? What cute girls are there? Whose number you going to get? Who you going to bring home? That whole element of newness is always part of nightlife. And that's fueling hookup culture as well, because no one's really going to bars and clubs to meet their husbands or their wives. But guys definitely are like, no, I ain't gonna find my wife here. I just want to come here. I want to bump and grind. I want to you know, get a cute girl's number, maybe make out with her, take her back to the crib. Girls won't admit that up front, but they're definitely not there to not find platonic relationships with a guy. That's definitely not happening. So I want to talk a little bit about my experiences going to the clubs, though. I would go by myself and in high school, and it was very like, dude, it was raunchy, man. It was raunchy, and it was dark. You got that music playing, we all sweaty, girls wearing leggings, you know, and short shirts where their belly button showing, you can see the piercings. And they got tights on, leggings, booty shorts on. Guys, we'll wear basketball shorts, sometimes with no underwear. And then the girls, they'll just, twerk on us so you can get the full effect. And that was fun. It was fun to go to. And I made it a practice in going as much as I could. And then when I had friends to go with, obviously it was a lot more fun. But then when I was 18, I became a Christian. Then I started to be more conscious of it. And I'm like, okay, it feels kind of weird going to this now since I am sort of have a different belief system. I feel more convicted. And again, I'm talking to my goddad about saving myself for marriage. So is going to bars and clubs going to help me do that? Because that's just fueling the lust I have, right? But I would still go in high school, at least. And I would still go as much as I could. And then went to Tallahassee for community college. and nightlife there is huge. Um, I went to a ton of clubs. Coliseum was a famous one off West Tennessee Street, over there by Chipotle and Varsity Place. So that was definitely a crazy time in my life for sure. And the thing about clubs is, you go and you talking to girls, can't really hear each other. You're shouting up at each other because the music is so loud. You can barely hear each other's name. But you will exchange numbers, and then once you leave, she was a little drunk, so she don't even remember you. So I actually, maybe one time of the 100 times I went to the club and danced with girls, maybe like once to twice I got a girl's number and got a date. But I knew I never wanted to go as far as like hooking up with a girl. See, I ironically was going to clubs to find a wife when I started out in college, at least like 18, 19. I actually thought I was going to find, a girl to date long term at a club. And I was so naive and ignorant at the time. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But it's just what it was. It was you go and then you hope that you meet somebody. And that's kind of fun. That element that'll never die out. So yes, hookup culture is very big in America. And I think clubs and nightlife is all fueling that. And there's so many other things that's fueling hookup culture as well. I read this article on The Hill, and it's basically talking about how most men are single, most women are not. Here's some text from the article that I want to read out to you. In recent years, there's been a historic rise in unpartnered Americans, particularly among the young. The pandemic made things worse. So a lot of people just aren't in relationships. It's just not a common practice as it used to be. And it talks a lot about how, there's a decline in marriage and how women don't need men anymore because women are making their own money. They're getting bachelor's degrees. And the more a woman makes, she wants a guy that makes more than her. There's only so many men that makes more than her. And then they also have a laundry list of what they're looking for as well. So the article talks about how a lot of women aren't choosing men. As of 2022, the article says Pew Research found 30% of U.S. adults are neither married, living with a partner, nor engaged in a committed relationship. Nearly half of all young adults are single. 34% of women and a whopping 63% of men. Are bars and clubs really helping with that? Are you going to find your wife or your husband at a bar and club? Especially due to the circumstances that we have today. Because there's really no incentive to get married anymore. It screws up men when they get divorced. And for women, they're very selective in who they want. And also, most of the guys that they want, which is in like the top 10%, those guys have options. So if you find a guy who's over 6 foot tall, educated, is making good money, he's going to have other women that want him. So it's going to be hard for him to be faithful to her. And a lot of women experience this. That's why I always wonder, girls are always like, oh, it's so hard to find a good man. I want to find a good man. No, it's a lot of good men. It's just not the ones that you want, because you want a high value man is what's been thrown around now. You want a quote unquote high value man, or, one of those unicorn men who kind of hit all those traits. So yes, the US definitely isn't nurturing what's happening right now. And there's an erosion of marriage and relationships and just healthy dating in general. because you got to think less and less people are going to church. I mean, there's stats to show that. There's data to show that less people identify as Christian in America as opposed to before. The church in itself is dwindling, its influence. It was this book I read, Alienated America, was talking about that, how the church was a central force in America because it was very proactive and engaged in volunteering and charitable work and funding nonprofits, facilitating community and how people met people, providing activities for people, providing meaning. The church was very active in that pre-World War II, maybe a little bit after, we're in the 60s and stuff, but the church had large influence in our country because it was what most people had defaulted to. And a lot of people were more inclined to get married. And also, too, I think another huge component in this that I've been thinking about is no one really stays in the same neighborhood that they grow up in anymore. So when I think about my grandparents and who they knew, they all grew up together. They all grew up in the same community for decades. And that's why my grandparents know the grandparents of other people that I meet. So, for instance, there was a friend whose grandparents knew my grandpa, and I had no idea that he knew him. And it was because they all stayed in that community for like several years, even decades. And they all went to elementary school, they went to the same middle school, they went to the same high school. And then they, kind of stayed around a little bit after that. But that's just how it was. They went to the same church, especially the church. The church was how a lot of people in that community met each other at that time. And at that time, it was where most people were trying to find someone to marry. Because I do think church back then definitely was at an all-time high, church attendance and, people being active and involved in church. As opposed to today, it's just not the same anymore. And you got to factor in too, again, as I said this before, people just had a different mentality in terms of dating. Women were looking for a man to take care of them. So more than likely, you're going to find that in a guy at church. Maybe there was a stigma on going to bars back then. Maybe there were, less people going to bars. Clubs, I think, got more popular around the 80s when electronic music became more of a fad. But it was just simpler times back then. It was just simple, right? You just grew up in the same community. You went to the church in your neighborhood. You hung out with the same people in your neighborhood. That's just how that was. But nowadays, it's just not the same anymore. Like I grew up in Detroit. I wasn't trying to stay in Detroit. As soon as I hit 18, Tallahassee. Then after Tallahassee, went to Syracuse. And after Syracuse, went to, New York City, DC. I wasn't trying to stay in Detroit. So yes, thinking of the mentality today among people, bars and clubs are just emblematic of that because it's where you go for these short-lived experiences to have short-lived experiences with other people of the opposite sex that don't really go anywhere romantically because you're only really there for carnal satisfaction, right? And I'm sure there are exceptions. I'm sure there are people who met their wives and husbands at a bar. That could happen. But when I'm looking at the rise of singleness and I'm looking at lonely men, our whole culture and community revolving around going to bars and clubs, I don't think that's helping. And the dating marketplace is skewed too. And I've said this before. I'm going to read another text in the article. Heterosexual women are getting more choosy Women don't want to marry down to form a long-term relationship to a man with less education and earnings than herself, said Ronald Levant, professor emeritus of psychology at the University of Akron and author of several books on masculinity. So again, as I've said before, as women make more money, they get more selective and their pool of viable candidates shrink. So a lot of men are being shut out of the dating marketplace. So very few men are sleeping with all the women. Most women are in relationships, and a lot of women aren't choosing men. So there's a large chunk of men that are isolated and left out of the dating marketplace. And that's what this article is talking about. Over 60% of men report being single, and most women are not, according to Pew Research. Men more than likely are lonely, single, sexually dormant, and romantically uninvolved. And that's why I think you got a lot of thirsty men going to these clubs and bars. And, girls ain't. And that's the thing. Girls typically flock in groups. And that's another weird thing, too. Sometimes I go to clubs and then, like, all the girls, they'll be in groups talking with each other. And then all the boys will be over here in the group talking with each other. And it's so weird. It's like the point of you guys going to the club is to meet someone of the opposite sex, right? So what are you doing? That's why, honestly, that was why I stopped going too. That was another reason, because I was just like, I'd go and then, it's kind of intimidating to approach a girl when she's around four of her friends. That's intimidating, bro. I'm not about to get rejected in front of your friends. That's mortifying. You ask for her number, she says no. All her friends looking at you like, no, that's a L. That's a major L. I ain't trying to. Guys in general aren't trying to go through that. So that's the thing. It's like, you go to these bars and clubs and people just can sometimes be a little uh segregated in terms of gender. They'll segregate themselves. And sometimes you got like towards the like maybe around midnight, people get more loose and then girls will dance with you sometimes, but I've kind of experienced both. I think more so at the black clubs. There's more dancing involved. There's more dancing and you getting twerked on and stuff. But like at the, white clubs where they playing EDM electronic, it's kind of hit or miss dancing with girls. Usually they'll be with their friends talking and then the guys with their friends talking. So most are at the black clubs though, like at FAMU club parties. See, that's the thing in Tallahassee. You have Florida State and you have FAMU. You can get the best of both worlds. You can go to the Florida State and go party with the frat boys with the red Solo cup, listening to rock music and EDM, electronic, Skrillex, dubstep. They doing Molly and X and taking drugs. And you go to the black clubs and it's, they playing Uncle Luke, twerk music. You got guys, with their hands behind their back, they getting twerked on. But I never forget the song that would get me hyped that played when I was at these clubs. All the guys. It started with, I know a little freak in Hollywood. I can't sing the rest of it because it's real lascivious. But it's definitely what got us draw humping for sure. I'll tell you that. But I got called from that lifestyle, man. I got called from that, and I'm so glad I stopped going. I actually threw a college party at one point too. I used to throw parties. Throwing parties was it was fun. It was cool. It's just that I was always fascinated at how comfortable people would get in your house when they don't know you. So like when when I would throw a party, the word spreads exponentially. And this is when I'm in Tallahassee. I had some roommates and we had a pretty spacious apartment. And we would tell people, and then when one person tells 2 people, those 2 people will tell 4 people, those 4 people tell 8, those 8 tell 16. And so I remember one time it got to a point where, dude, it literally, our apartment turned into a rager. Like, it was just like so many people in our apartment. And I had girls in my room on my bed, just chilling. They just on my bed. I'm just like, y'all don't know me. Like, they on my bed chilling and gossiping. It sounded like. And then my bathroom, I had girls in my bathroom doing their makeup, kind of, getting it all together. It was people making out on my couch. You got people going through my fridge. Oh, where's the liquor, man? Where's the... I'm like, bro, this got crazy. This got crazy. But it's like, it's college is what we do, right? It's fun. I get it. It's all fun. And that's what you want when you're young. You want that sense of excitement, that sense of newness, that sense of adventure. You want that. That's part of being in your 20s. And that'll never get old. That'll never get old. And it can, in a lot of ways, be good for you because you do go through a lot when meeting people. You learn how to navigate certain social situations. You learn how to develop social skills and talk to people of the opposite sex. And you just learn a lot about yourself when you go out in that world. So I get it. I don't want to stigmatize or talk down to people who go to bars and clubs. Really, the whole point of this conversation I'm having is, why are they so central in how we meet people? Why? Why are bars and clubs the only way people meet people nowadays? Because if you don't drink, then there's really not much else for you to do, right? Think about it. I mean, drinking is how people connect, and it's how people get together and assemble. Bars, clubs, nightlife. That's what the hype is around, right? Even when you go to Miami, you go to Atlanta, you go to Philly, Boston, LA, Scottsdale. On a Saturday night, you got a ton of young people dressed up and they lined up outside of a bar and club. And that really is where all of the hype is. That's where most young people are going to meet people. That's just how it is. But I always wonder, like, could there be other ways? Could there be other things that we could do that doesn't involve alcohol or carnal activity? Because we all know you ain't finding your husband and your wife at a bar or club. We all know that, and people say that all the time. So that's the thing. But yet we still go, and yet we still want to get involved in this. Especially when you're looking at, marriage rates, marriages declining, less and less people going to church, the rise of singleness, hookup culture. Bars and clubs aren't helping, for sure. And also, too, I mean, I talked about this in my last podcast, the pornographic culture we live in, and it gets pornographic at these bars and clubs. Look at what people are wearing, right? And we're all desensitized to it. We're desensitized to what we're looking at. And this is where we go to seek romance, in a sense, or seek sexual pleasure. And I think that is just not going to change. People are just going to always go do that. So yes, I did leave the nightlife. I had to put it to death because it just wasn't good for my journey in sexual purity. I'm a virgin. I'm saving myself till marriage. I'm 30 years old. So I had to walk away from that lifestyle. And bars and clubs is a huge part of my journey because I think everybody has their vice. That was my vice. Because, again, I'm literally in there dry humping with girls and getting spicy. So it was something that I needed to go through. And then once I found Christ, I'm like, okay, yes. Now I see why this lifestyle wasn't leading anywhere and how Christianity is going to lead to something greater. And I want to read a scripture, Thessalonians 4, Chapter 4, verse 4, honor God with your bodies. Well, that's part of the scripture, but and I think that seals all the cracks, because I think we talk about literally not having sex before marriage. So yes, we all know as Christians we're not supposed to have sex before we're married, but I think honor God with your bodies, it seals all the cracks in other ways. Like, how do you honor God with your body? Getting twerked on definitely isn't honoring God with your body in a sense. We're hosting the Holy Spirit. Unless you're your wife. If your wife's twerking on you, that's another thing. So yes, it's definitely it's part of my story. It's part of my journey. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to talk about what I went through in order to show how Christ can have power in someone's life. Because even though something is enticing and fun and entertaining, and even though the crowd, everyone else in the world is telling you to do something and everyone else in the world is doing it, it doesn't mean you have to do it. It doesn't mean that there aren't other things to do. Like what I like to do, I like to go to coffee shops and kind of read and chill. That's my place that I go to hang out. May not be the best place to meet people because other people are going to read and do stuff too. It's not necessarily functional for socializing, but it's cool to do. And then you got meetup.com. That's a cool thing to do. You got people doing Bumble BFF. I see people do that. But there are other things to do. And when you're really, truly seeking, you'll find it. I say church. Churches are really great. Get plugged into a young adults group. And people typically are doing stuff on weekends. You get plugged into a church. Get you out those clubs. Get you out that nightlife. Trust me, as a guy, man, you ain't going to go. You're not going to go find your wife. You're not going to get the hot girl and she going to be your wife. What she going to do is she's going to gravitate towards the VIP section where the guys with status are. That's what she'll be. You're not going to get her number. And you know that. You just want to go and window shop, and you want to be with your friends sitting in the corner on your phones and looking at girls window shopping. Dang, look at that, man. Dang, she bad. Ain't she bad? None of y'all ain't going to approach her. That's the thing. People go to this stuff, man. They know it's a waste of time. They know it's not going to lead anywhere. But yet we all still go because bars and clubs are the only option. And a lot of people like to drink, and it's kind of the main thing that brings people together is drinking alcohol. But what if there were other things that we can do, right? What if there were other things that we can do recreationally as young people to bring people together? Perhaps we got to develop more infrastructure for that. Perhaps there has to be a societal paradigm shift, a mental shift. Like I said, everything is being dumbed down, man. Everything is being dumbed down. Everyone's flocking toward entertainment. I wish people went to the library. I wish the library was a cool thing to go to. That'd be cool. I'd love stuff like that. So yes, I love talking about stuff like this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Why are bars and clubs the main place people go to hang out and meet people? Do you think you'll find your wife and husband at a bar or club? Let me know. Post it in the comments. See y'all later.